The sky above Europe that morning was a muted canvas of gray, stretched and heavy, with clouds drifting like ghosts over the patchwork of bombed towns, rivers, and forests. In the cockpit of the lead B-17 Flying Fortress, Lieutenant James Mallory gripped the yoke, feeling the vibration of the four right engines thrumming beneath him like a living heart. He knew the stakes. Thousands of miles flown through flak, enemy fighters circling like sharks, every decision measured in inches, seconds, and the lives of men below and aboard. As the bomber formation approached the target, a sprawling German industrial complex that had defied Allied attacks for months, tension thickened the air more than the engines ever could. The traditional vertical bombing runs had failed too often. Planes lost to anti-aircraft artillery, bombs missing by hundreds of feet, whole missions rendered almost futile. But today, a daring new tactic, whispered in briefings and argued over in tense mess halls, would be tested, dropping bombs sideways, banking the aircraft at precise angles, adjusting for wind, velocity, and formation offsets in ways that defied conventional wisdom. As Mallory leveled the B-17, clouds forming around the wings, the faint scent of fuel mixed with the adrenaline in his lungs. He could almost hear the ghosts of previous crews whispering, "This is madness. This will fail." And yet, as the formation held, bombsight operators adjusting meticulously, calculating drift and airspeed. The aircraft rolled gently, wings cutting the mist, carrying hundreds of pounds of ordnance in a ballet of destruction, choreographed by physics, courage, and desperation. Below, the factories waited, oblivious to the fate descending upon them, stacks of smokestacks rising like fingers from the gray ground. Every release, every slight tilt had to be perfect. A second's error meant bombs falling into empty fields or onto friendly positions, a result no crew could bear. And yet, as Mallory eased the control wheel, the first ordnance fell sideways, tracing arcs across the sky, spinning and twisting, striking the target with precision previously unimagined, buildings crumbling, smoke rising in chaotic plumes, German defenders scrambling in disbelief. The crews held their nerve, adjusting for gusts, coordinating with radios, watching the tracer smoke from flak burst near the formation, feeling the vibrations through the fuselage, every shockwave a reminder of fragility and mortality. The sideways drop demanded not only exact calculations, but absolute trust in the aircraft, the instruments, the men alongside them, and in the unseen hand of fate itself. As the bombs tore through the industrial complex, hitting silos, workshops, and fuel depots, a strange hush descended on the formation, a fleeting silence between bursts of flak and the groan of propellers. A moment when history seemed to pause to witness the audacity of these airmen. Every man in the B-17 understood the transformation occurring in real time. This was not just a tactic, but a revelation, a rewriting of what was thought possible for strategic bombing, a testament to innovation born from repeated failure, loss, and necessity. The sideways release became more than geometry. It became poetry, a grim ballet of war, where calculation and courage intersected in the skies above a continent at war. As the formation banked and leveled again, smoke plumes rising from the target like black rivers, each man took stock of the destruction wrought, the unnerving precision of bombs that had once been scattered and ineffectual, and realized that this single adjustment, a tilt of degrees, a nuanced change in technique, had multiplied their effectiveness, tripled their accuracy, and in doing so, altered the very rhythm of air campaigns to come. Below, anti-aircraft guns roared, yet they were increasingly irrelevant, their shells failing to reach targets that no longer fell predictably from above. In the final moments of the pass, as the bomb bay doors closed and the formation ascended toward higher altitude, the pilots felt the weight of accomplishment and the quiet, almost reverent recognition that innovation had saved lives, ensured destruction with greater efficiency, and rewritten the calculus of war in the air. As the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the scarred landscape below, every man in that formation knew they had witnessed the dawn of a new era in strategic bombing, and that the sideways drop, initially derided as reckless, impossible, or foolhardy, had proven its devastating power in the most cinematic of ways, leaving a lingering suspense over the fate of the next missions, the next targets, and the continued evolution of air warfare itself. The adrenaline slowly ebbed, leaving a reflective silence punctuated only by engine hum and radio chatter. And as the formation began its turn home, the men glanced at one another through the canopy, silent acknowledgement passing between hardened faces. The world above and below had just changed. Forever. The B-17 formation now cut through a patchwork of low-hanging clouds, gray and swollen like a vast ocean frozen in the sky, the sun hidden behind a curtain of mist, throwing everything into a muted, tense light. Lieutenant Mallory's hands moved almost instinctively over the controls, fingers feeling every vibration, every whisper of wind over the wings. The plane alive beneath him, as if aware of the critical precision demanded in the next pass. Below, the European countryside stretched out in deceptive calm, villages untouched yet, winding rivers reflecting the pale light, fields dotted with survivors of previous raids, unaware of the impending destruction. Bombardiers leaned over their Norden bomb sites, eyes narrowed, focusing on tiny crosshairs that had become the center of their universe, adjusting for wind drift, airspeed, altitude, even humidity, the minutiae that now meant the difference between obliterating a factory and wasting ordnance over pasture. Every heartbeat in the plane felt louder, echoing through the aluminum frame, each man acutely aware that failure was no longer a mere statistic. It was instant and unforgiving. Suddenly, the signal came, a subtle flick on the radio, a quiet nod from the lead aircraft, and the bomb bay doors creaked open, releasing ordnance in slow, deliberate succession. The bombs arced sideways, tracing invisible curves across the sky, spinning like deadly dancers on invisible threads, twisting and falling with a controlled randomness that defied intuition, yet adhered perfectly to the calculations fed to the bomb site. From above, the formation watched in tense anticipation as the first impact hit. A warehouse exploded in fire and metal shards, sending a column of black smoke into the heavens, followed by a sequence of smaller blasts that struck machinery, vehicles, and ammo stores. The German defenders scrambled below, their anti-aircraft batteries belching fire, tracers slicing the sky. Yet the bombs seemed to move with a will of their own, arriving with precision, refusing to scatter, rewriting what had been considered the limits of air bombardment. Each successive release confirmed the pattern, a sideways tilt, a micro-adjustment, and the bombs found their mark with unerring accuracy. The resulting destruction both terrifying and mesmerizing from hundreds of feet above. Inside the aircraft, the crew felt an unspoken bond, each man playing a role in a lethal choreography of air and earth, steel and fire, calculation and instinct. The flak bursts that threatened to tear wings from fuselages were met with evasive banking, slight corrections that kept bombs aligned with the targets. And the aircraft, designed to endure punishment, seemed to respond to the subtlety of its pilot's touch. Hours passed, yet the tension remained taut, the adrenaline flowing, the air thick with the smell of oil, sweat, and a faint trace of burning powder from below. Pilots whispered encouragement. Observers called out minute adjustments, and for the first time, the crews began to feel the true power of this sideways technique, control over chaos, the ability to impose order on a battlefield where randomness had once ruled. By the end of the sortie, smoke rose in controlled spirals from the factories and depots below, evidence of the precision achieved, the method validated beyond theory. In that moment, the men understood that the sideways drop was more than a tactic. It was a statement, proof that innovation, courage, and relentless attention to detail could bend the rules of aerial combat, tripling the effectiveness of missions that had once been plagued by misses and failures. The tension slowly released as the planes leveled, engines humming with steady rhythm, the crew exchanging quiet, relieved glances, hearts still pounding from the gravity of what they had just accomplished. The sky above, still layered with clouds, bore witness to a transformation, and every man aboard knew they had participated in a turning point, a moment when human ingenuity had reshaped the theater of war, one calculated tilt at a time. The suspense remained in the air like an electric current. The method worked, but what would the next target reveal? And how far could this newfound precision extend the reach and power of the U.S. bombing campaign? The morning sun now pierced through ragged clouds, painting the sky with streaks of gold that glinted off the silver fuselages of the B-17s, each plane moving as if part of a single, breathing organism. Inside the lead bomber, the crew was tense but focused, the cabin filled with the low hum of engines, the occasional metallic clink of equipment, and the quiet muttered calculations of men who had become intimate with the delicate dance of physics and gravity. Each man knew the stakes. Below, the enemy factories and depots held the lifeblood of Germany's war machine, and above, flak bursts threatened to turn planes into shredded wrecks with the blink of an eye. The bomb bay doors opened with a reluctant groan, releasing the first sequence of ordnance, now tilted sideways at precise angles, dictated by hours of experimentation and calculations. The bombs, seemingly defying their natural fall, arced elegantly, spinning along trajectories that only the bomb sight and meticulous crew coordination could dictate. Every release was followed by tense observation. Smoke rising, walls crumbling, fire blossoming. Each strike a confirmation that the sideways drop method was rewriting the rules of aerial bombardment. The radio crackled with updates, voices clipped but calm, observers calling out micro-adjustments in wind speed, altitude, and angle, each minor tweak having a magnified effect on the bombs below. The German defenders below scrambled desperately, flak cutting through the sky, bullets zipping past fuselages. But the crew of the B-17s had become masters of precision, their planes bending ever so slightly to absorb the turbulence. Their altitudes adjusted in subtle increments that the enemy could never anticipate. Hours passed like a heartbeat. The men scarcely noticed the strain on their bodies as the rhythm of calculation, observation, and release became almost meditative. Each hit reinforced the method's brilliance. Warehouses leveled, ammunition depots shattered, fuel tanks ignited in brilliant orange plumes, and enemy morale crumbled under the perfection of the technique. In moments of rare silence between flak bursts, the crew exchanged glances, unspoken acknowledgement passing between them, pride, relief, and awe at what they had achieved. The sideways drop had become more than a tactical adjustment. It was a revelation, a subtle transformation of air combat, giving men the power to impose exacting precision on chaos. And yet the tension never fully lifted. Every turn of the plane, every correction, was a reminder that perfection required constant attention, constant adaptation, and a willingness to trust instincts honed over countless missions. As the formation leveled and began its return journey, smoke and fire below told the story of destruction wrought with new artistry, evidence that the U.S. bombing campaign had reached a turning point. The sidewise drop, once considered unorthodox, now proved that human ingenuity and mechanical mastery could conquer even the most unpredictable skies. The suspense lingered like a living thing. The method worked. The factories were crippled, but the war had not yet ended, and every sortie would demand the same unyielding precision, the same courage in the face of lethal unpredictability, ensuring that each flight was a delicate balance between triumph and disaster. By mid-afternoon, the sky had transformed into a turbulent canvas of shifting clouds and sunlight, patches of shadow racing across the fields and towns below, and the B-17s carved steady lines through the air, their silver skins reflecting fleeting glimmers like polished steel knives slicing through silk. Inside the lead bomber, the crew moved with a practiced synchronicity born of countless sorties, every man acutely aware of his role, the navigator calculating wind drift down to fractions of a mile per hour, the bombardier adjusting the stabilizers for the optimal sideways trajectory, the gunners scanning the horizon for enemy fighters that might emerge from the cloud banks in sudden, violent ambush. The new technique, dropping bombs at calculated angles while compensating for wind, altitude, and the slightest shifts in aircraft weight, had transformed their approach into an almost surgical operation, a combination of mathematics, intuition, and nerve. As the bomb bay doors hissed open, releasing a new volley, the bomb spun slightly, almost imperceptibly, and then fell with a precision that seemed to defy gravity itself. striking their targets with pinpoint accuracy. Below, the devastation was immediate. Smoke spiraled upward from fuel depots. Warehouses erupted into fireballs. Rail lines twisted and buckled, and the enemy crews scrambled in confusion and terror, unable to anticipate this new method of aerial destruction. Inside the plane, tension and exhilaration intertwined, each strike confirming the brilliance of the sideways drop while reminding the men of the deadly stakes surrounding them, as flak bursts suddenly cracked around the fuselage, shaking the bomber with explosive force. Each adjustment, every slight alteration of angle or throttle required split-second timing, the culmination of countless drills, simulations, and prior failures. The crew felt themselves becoming part of the aircraft, their decisions flowing seamlessly through the controls, the engines, the wings, as if they were extensions of the human mind itself, translating thought into precision devastation. Hours stretched in a seamless flow of calculation, observation, and execution, punctuated only by the occasional roar of anti-aircraft fire or the clipped chatter of radio updates from fellow bombers. The sideways method had not merely increased accuracy, it had fundamentally changed the psychology of bombing runs, granting the crews a sense of mastery over the chaos below, a control that had once seemed impossible against the unpredictability of wind, altitude, and enemy defenses. By the time the formation began its return to base, smoke still rising from shattered targets, the crew experienced the profound satisfaction of a mission executed with unparalleled precision. Lives saved, objectives destroyed, and a tactical innovation proving its worth. Yet even in that triumph, suspense lingered. The war was far from over, and every flight demanded the same courage, the same focus, the same ability to trust in calculation and instinct, ensuring that each mission was a delicate balance between deadly risk and extraordinary achievement. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the clouds in bruised purples and gold, the formation of B-17s sliced through the crisp air with an eerie, purposeful grace. The sideways bombing technique, now fully integrated into their doctrine, demanded absolute focus. No hesitation, no second-guessing, every calculation precise to fractions of a second. The navigator adjusted the drift angle while scanning for minor wind shifts that could throw off the bomb's delicate trajectory. Inside the bomber, instruments hummed with tension, each dial a testament to engineering married with human intuition. The bombardier leaned over the Norden, eyes tracing crosshairs like a hawk sizing up prey, adjusting release mechanisms with millimeter-perfect timing, feeling the pulse of the aircraft beneath his fingertips, the subtle flecks of wings absorbing turbulence and engine vibrations alike. Outside, the enemy landscape was a labyrinth of fortifications, rail yards, and fuel depots, every structure a potential target, every miscalculation a catastrophic failure. As the bomb bay doors opened, the payload dropped sideways, the bombs spinning slightly, a dance dictated by physics and precision. Below, explosions erupted in symphonic chaos, fires, smoke, twisted metal, and the enemy's defenses reeled, unable to predict the new vector of destruction. Each successive run built confidence, the crew moving in near-silent choreography, communicating through gestures, glances, and the rhythm of engines. Time seemed to bend. Minutes stretched and contracted as anticipation and terror coexisted. Flak bursts tore through the sky around them, shrapnel rattling against the fuselage, yet every man remained focused, each drop confirming the reliability of their method. The sideways tactic had transformed bombing runs from random devastation into calculated artistry, a deadly ballet of precision, courage, and unyielding discipline. By the time they returned home, the pilots and crew carried both exhaustion and exhilaration, the knowledge that they had rewritten the rules of aerial bombardment, that their courage, skill, and the innovation of sideways dropping would echo in every future mission. Yet even in victory, suspense lingered. Each sortie was a reminder of fragility, a whisper that the skies could always turn hostile, and that mastery of this deadly technique was only a temporary reprieve in the relentless calculus of war. The morning sky over Europe was a canvas of steel-gray clouds, threaded with golden shafts of sunlight that glinted off the polished fuselages of B-17 flying fortresses. Each plane carried hundreds of pounds of ordnance, yet the crews moved. With a rhythm that suggested both ritual and instinct, the culmination of years of innovation, trial, and sacrifice. The sideways bombing technique, once experimental, was now a silent guarantee of devastation, a weapon that let American airmen strike with unprecedented precision while defying the chaos below. The bombardier's eyes were unblinking, scanning the terrain through the Norden's sight, calculating every drift, every gust, every subtle shift in altitude. Engines roared like distant thunder, the vibration running through the metal frame and into the bones of the men who had become one with the aircraft. As the bomb bays opened, the payloads fell sideways, tracing arcs of fire through the sky. Each explosion marking a target hit with a terrifying elegance. Anti-aircraft fire erupted in rhythmic bursts, black clouds of flak illuminating the tension, yet the bombers held their lines, precise, unwavering, a testament to discipline and sheer nerve. Inside, crews whispered, gestured, adjusted, communicated. Without words, all muscles and senses attuned to the lethal choreography unfolding below. Across rivers, towns, railways, and factories, the new technique turned the battlefield into a controlled pattern of destruction, minimizing wasted ordnance, maximizing impact, and terrifying the enemy who had never anticipated such mastery. As the formations banked and turned toward home, smoke and fire streaking the horizon behind them, a strange mix of exhilaration and exhaustion settled over the crews. They had not only executed the mission but changed the very rules of aerial warfare, proving that innovation, combined with courage, could tilt fate itself. When the bombers touched down, engines winding down, men slid out of cockpits drenched in sweat and adrenaline, eyes still tracing the skies where their deadly arcs had flown. The suspense, however, remained. The skies were never truly safe. Every sortie a gamble, every drift angle a brush with chaos. And yet, in that fragile victory, the crews knew they had achieved the impossible, turning sideways drops into a weapon so precise, so deadly, that it would echo across the war and inspire every future generation of bomber strategy. The horizon glowed faintly as the sun rose higher, and in that quiet aftermath, the men and planes rested. But the lesson lingered. Innovation had turned danger into art, and in that alchemy, the balance of war had shifted. The morning air hung heavy and electric over the European front. A fragile calm stretched across the sky, broken only by the rhythmic roar of engines from the B-17 flying fortresses, lined up like iron birds poised for war. For the crews about, to execute the new sideways bombing technique, every heartbeat echoed in their chests, anticipation mingling with the faint taste of fear and exhilaration. As the lead plane lifted off, the others followed in a disciplined formation, their propellers slicing the clouds into ribbons of turbulence, the fuselage humming with the combined power of 100 tons of steel, fuel, and courage. From the nose of the bomber, the bombardier peered through the glass, eyes locked on the target far below, a sprawling industrial complex, smoke curling from chimneys, anti-aircraft flak already waiting like angry stingers. The technique they were about to use, flying slightly sideways, letting gravity, momentum, and wind combine in a calculated ballet, had been deemed unconventional, risky even by hardened commanders. Yet every pilot and crew member had trained. For this moment, every calculation, every wind chart, every practice run distilled into this singular act. As the plane banked ever so slightly, the bombs, heavy with potential destruction, hung for a heartbeat in the hold like restrained beasts, then released, slicing through the air in perfect arcs. Below, the enemy installations were alive with motion, workers, soldiers, and anti-aircraft gunners, but none could anticipate the new angle, the invisible geometry of war that had transformed the skies. Each impact exploded with violent precision, smoke and fire blooming in patterns that made maps irrelevant. The bombs seemed to have a mind of their own, guided by the blend of science, daring, and intuition honed in the skies over Europe. For the crews, each successful strike was a surge of adrenaline, a confirmation that the hours of simulation, the arguments over methodology, the sleepless nights poring over physics and meteorology had all been worth it. As the formation completed, its run, flak tracers streaked through clouds behind them, whining and tearing at the air, but the fortresses remained steady, their new technique shielding them from the worst, the sideways drift absorbing and deflecting what had once been deadly certainty. From the ground, observers noted the surreal precision. Buildings leveled in patterns that no conventional dive or level bombing could achieve. Factories silenced, rail yards obliterated, and yet, miraculously, crews returned with minimal losses. Within the bomb bays, crew members exhaled, tension unraveling into awe at the unfolding results. Intelligence officers would later describe the footage as almost artistic, a deadly choreography that combined geometry and physics with the raw human instinct for survival. Over the following weeks, as the technique was repeated, strategic maps of Europe began to show altered patterns of destruction. Entire supply lines, previously resilient, faltered under the precision assault. Commanders marveled at the multiplication of effect. Not only did accuracy triple, but the psychological impact on the enemy was profound. They could no longer predict where the next devastating strike would fall. And yet, amid the machinery of destruction, the crews felt the weight of responsibility, the human cost of every perfectly dropped bomb, the knowledge that thousands of lives hung in the balance, below their wings. In the final hour of the operation, as the last plane of the formation touched down, engines winding down, clouds tinged with the pink and gold of sunset, silence settled across the airfield, punctuated only by the soft hiss of cooling metal and the distant echo of distant explosions, still lingering over the horizon. Pilots and crew climbed from their cockpits, faces streaked with sweat, soot, and relief, eyes meeting in wordless recognition of what had been accomplished. Not merely a tactical victory, but a demonstration of human ingenuity, courage, and adaptation in the face of relentless war. In the debriefing halls, maps sprawled across tables, photographs of destruction pinned on walls. The commanders' voices carried the final verdict. The sideways bombing technique had changed the calculus of strategic warfare forever. And for the men who had flown it, for the engineers and scientists who had calculated it, for the generations who would study these maneuvers, a profound lesson remained. Innovation, when fused with bravery and precision, could bend even the most destructive force to human will. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, illuminating the clouds where B-17s had soared like angels of vengeance, a testament to the union of mind, machine, and courage, a final haunting echo of a technique that had tripled accuracy, saved countless lives, and forever transformed the art and science of bombing. The suspense lingered in the sky, a silent promise to history. Warfare would never be the same again, and those who mastered the skies would forever write their names among the clouds.